Okay, if you could go to your seats, we will start. We will start the meeting tonight. Just letting everybody know, this is a dealer council meeting on August 19th. We're starting at 7 o'clock straight up tonight. We are meeting in policies and procedures in accordance with the governor's office up in Lansing on the Open Meetings Act. And no, everything you're saying tonight is via, I'm sorry, and please silence your phones that are going off around me. And in the crowd, silence those too. We are meeting under policies and procedures of the governor on Open Meetings Act. So with that, I'd love everybody to stand and we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance together. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good. Good. So clerk, if you could call us to order and give us a roll call, please.
Mayor Turnbull.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Morosky Brown.
Here.
Councilmember Carter.
Here.
Councilmember Janetti.
Here.
Councilmember Krentz.
Here. Great. So some of you are new, but most have been around. As you came in, there's an agenda there just into the right where you come into the door. I will be kind of, again, your master of ceremony as we walk through this very quickly. We are now section 3, approval of the agenda. If there's anything that will add on the consent agenda, we'll go back and do that. So, or take away. We are out of them now. We will make some more. Thank you very much, Jeff. I appreciate you bringing that to our attention. We didn't think there'd be quite as many people here, so they make about 50. So from that, we will get those out there, but just stay with me. I'll tell you what's going on. So approval of the agenda. You have the agenda in front of you. At this point, I would ask if there's anything to delete or to add to the agenda other than the consent agenda. Go right ahead.
Well, yeah, not the consent agenda. Nothing to change, but I want to say under 5A, written communication received. We did receive 2 written comments which are now available on the Diligent website for us to see, but they were not there until a little after 6:40. So there's 2, it's quite a big document, but there's 2 comments. So I want to respectfully thank those that submitted it.
Yes.
But say I know for myself, I wasn't able to review it because I was walking to the meeting when they were uploaded. So just as a,
Right.
just
Absolutely. And everybody's been asked to review those up here. Everybody online can see those now. One document was a little bit larger than normal. Everything is out there.
Right.
Everything is there for those to view.
For whatever reason, there was a difficulty getting it uploaded. So that, and just as a matter of under it's 9B, new business. That is related to the first reading of the code of ordinance for tree preservation.
Right.
And if anybody's looking at the agenda, they'll see immediately below it, it says Code of Ordinances, Chapter 90 Vegetation, Article 2. That is a remnant that should not have been in the Word document. So B is still there. We will be addressing B, but if you're wondering what that text was in there, the clerk has let me know that really
We're not talking about vegetation tonight, so.
Well, we're talking about tree preservation, which is under chapter 90, but I just meant if somebody's looking at it and that's confusing, that was an artifact and should not have been in there. But there is no change that I see proposed.
So I'm looking for a motion to go forward with the agenda that you have in front of you. When we get to the consent, if there's anything to add to delete to that, we will look at that.
I move to approve the agenda as submitted.
Support. So we have a motion properly supported. Any other discussion? Seeing none, I think we can do this. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. We have an agenda. Great. So now we're on to section 4, presentations. We are very fortunate. We have the presentation of the police officer of the year. We did this 4th of July. We had a big ceremony downstairs. This is the public ceremony today. So Chief, if you could tell us what's going on and your recipient.
Good evening, Mayor, members of City Council. I want to thank you for the honor and privilege to introduce our 2023 Northville Police Officer of the Year, Detective Erin Larkin. Detective Larkin, if you can come up here. So every year, members of the police department submit nominations to the administration for this award. Only those nominated are considered. This is obviously one of the highest honors to be recognized by your peers. Detective Larkin has over 20 years of police experience coming to us from the Washtenaw County Sheriff's Department in 2020. During her short time here, she has excelled as an officer and was appointed to the Detective Bureau in 2022. She has taken on various roles within the department, including becoming an evidence technician and is part of the department's critical incident stress management team. Erin has a selfless attitude and strong work ethic. She is smart, dedicated, and an asset to the department. Working in a small department, you're required to take on many different roles. On many occasions, Detective Larkin covers road patrol while she's still working cases in the Detective Bureau. She does this quite often. She does this without complaint. I worked with many officers in my career, and I can say she is one of the best that I've ever worked with.
Wow.
On a side note, Erin was the first officer that I hired here in Northville when I came here. So I do take credit for
Working
some
out
of
very
this.
well.
So just so you
Duly
know.
noted.
But again, I'd like to congratulate Erin on this achievement. Well deserved, Erin. Congratulations. Our county commissioner, Terry Marecki, she has a county resolution for Erin. And then after her will be our state representative, Matt Colazar.
I'm sorry.
Don't pull the gun. Just a taser.
I have to know the anatomy of a.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me, all of you. I really appreciate this and congratulations. I always wanted to be a detective when I was little, starting with the first Nancy Drew book I read in second grade. So what a great job you must have. Hard job, a great job, but thank you for everything you do, especially in these trying times with police officers and the last years of things that have been going on. So thank you for your service. And on behalf of the Wayne County Commission, we want to honor you as the Officer of the Year and present you with this. And thank you for everything you do. It's an honor to be here and to see you and get to know you. And congratulations.
If I can have our
Stick
state
around right up there.
representative, Matt
Because we'll have a
Colazar.
picture of
And
them.
then we'll do pictures at the end.
Yep.
Well, Commissioner Marecki made me realize be very careful when stepping up to the podium. Commissioner. I'm just going to echo a lot of what the commissioners said, Detective Larkin. Really, just thank you for everything you do. I remember last year during the 2022 Officer of the Year, I said, this is something I want to be at every year because we don't do enough for all of you, but this is the least we can do is just to acknowledge all your great work. So on behalf of the state of Michigan, thank you so much for everything.
Keith, you want us to stand behind? I think he wants us to stand behind.
We need to.
So on behalf of the city.
I want to give her a hug.
So on behalf of the city,
Give her a hug.
we thank you so much for all you've done in the past year, all you're going to be doing. That's just to read a little bit of this. It's long and it's all deserving, and we did this July 4th and it was great with the family and everybody there, but it says Northville Police Department, 2023 Police Officer of the Year, recognition of outstanding excellence honoring Detective Erin Larkin. Recognition of her exemplary service and dedication in both her detective and patrol duties, as well as adhering to her highest ethical and moral standards, always endeavoring to provide her best efforts to the citizens of Northville, as well as the citizens and co-workers of Northville. Detective Erin Larkin has earned the honor of being named the 2023 Officer of the Year for the Northville Police Department. We are so honored. Hardware. It basically says the same thing, but we thank you so much for being Officer of the Year. I don't. Might not be able to hold all those push-ups are working. And everybody come up.
A season pass to Cedar Point and
Erin Marecki, our and everybody bunch up.
You want to bunch up here?
It's all about you in the middle. Yeah, grab one of those things. And why don't you come right here?
Are we switching it up? Oh, no, we won't be in the picture.
Oh, well,
It's the big guy. I think that's
yours or?
yeah. Somehow again.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'll get out of the way. What? Perfect. Next.
Well, you know how to avoid photo bombing.
I know, I'm getting
This
it.
is really good. Thanks for.
No, I'm getting out of there. That's okay. Thank you. So now after the presentations, if you have, do we have the new agendas out there? Anybody who needs one, I think they're over there. We will go to public comment that anything that's not on the agenda. So tonight on the agenda, as you look through, is I'm sure you're here for the dog licenses going from 1 year to 3 years. So if you're going to talk about the dog license, I'd ask you to wait for that. Number two, the tree preservation and the ordinances, I'd ask for you to wait. Number three, the traffic control order. And number four, we'll talk about the daylighting of the Rouge River and different activities. I would ask for you to wait until we are on those four. If it's anything other than that, this would be the time. If it's that, I will stop you. You have 3 minutes, no more than that. We will unplug at 3 minutes, just like you see on TV and stuff. There's a lot of people here tonight. So with that, I would ask if you're going to talk, just line up at this time for time consensus and just come up, name and address. Thank you so much for your patience.
Hi, I'm Carol Suchak. I live in Plymouth Township, and I am running for Wayne County Commissioner. And I'm running for District 9, which services most of the city of Northville, Northville Township, Livonia, and Plymouth Township. I am running as a Democrat and proud to say I won my first election last week. But I look forward to getting to know more of you. And if you want to learn more about me, you can visit my website and check me out online. When you look me up, a very tough last name, Suchak. My family's claim to fame is my uncle Steve Suchak lost his job to ALK line many years ago. So if you check out Suchak, you might find Steve a little bit higher than my name. But I do have over 20 years of leadership experience in local government, and I retired a few years ago as the director of the Plymouth District Library. So I'll be here throughout the meeting and afterwards, if anybody would like to meet or talk. I look forward to seeing you.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Welcome to Norfolk tonight. You bet. Dr. Demery, it's all yours.
Mr. Mayor,
You bet.
Council, Mr. Lahannis, William Demery, 371 East Main. I want to thank the city administration for the temporary reopening of Main Street. It helps alleviate a bottleneck that happens on southbound Griswold. Southbound Griswold, left-hand turns onto South Main, which is the majority of the traffic, cannot usually make that turn because when the bypass is Katy, there's a steady stream of traffic that goes straight ahead north. So generally one car per light gets through. So during the heaviest traffic times, Griswold is backed up all the way to the curve by the Living and Learning House. And probably more things will happen on Griswold in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor. Appreciate it. Okay. Jim Long, you're up. Honorable Jim Long.
Jim Long, 400 Fairbuck Court. The DTE substation at Beale and Griswold, northeast corner. That building, 70, 80 years old, slated for demolition. It's got a basement. It's got plaster coves inside. that aren't cracked. I mean, it's in great shape. I bring this to your attention. If you want to pass it on to some preservationists in town, it is out of the HDC's area of control, but maybe it's of interest. And with the DTE CEO living in town,
That is correct.
The township.
potentially request maybe slicing the corner out with a nice donation to the city for whatever use somebody might want it for the city.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll try to be in touch with Jerry Narcia, the CEO. Thank you very much for bringing that to attention. I didn't know that. Next.
Hi,
Mary.
Mary Ell Ortiz, 502 West Main. I'm looking at the agenda and I'm not seeing any discussion about getting Zoom back. The last two meetings that we had were not able to be live streamed because of glitches with YouTube live stream. And the meeting before that, the presentation was unviewable to the people at home. So I think you do owe us a discussion about Zoom in the near future, and I'd like to see it on there soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. We brought in professionals because there's been problems, streaming around it in this area. So we have professionals who are paying to stream both on YouTube and on the city website. So thank you. Anybody else at this time? Anything that's not on the agenda? Going once, going twice? Okay, I'm closing off public comment on things that are not on the agenda. So now going forward, we are going to we received communications and the two of them that came in, everybody is right up here.
No.
Okay,
they
you have
didn't.
not.
Well, no, they didn't come in until 6:40,
I
so
know.
I have not been able to read them.
Right. So
I will.
we have those. It's in the packages for those that are online now. It's unusual. Usually by 4:00, everything should be in the package and they can attach comments and look at them and forward them our way. But correct. Those are the two. So that is 5A. And now we're going to consideration of approving the following consent agenda. There's a few things that may or may not be added or deleted.
Why
So
don't I-
why
I'll
don't you go
start,
ahead?
And then I'll let George take it from there. But
Okay.
so at the request of the clerk, that for items 6A through 6D, to remove those from the agenda. The minutes will be taken up hopefully at our next meeting. And then the bills list, was not available for posting. And that covers that. So now it'll be items, what I'm proposing would be 6, E becomes A. And then it's A, B, down to L, which becomes H, if my alphabet's correct. So it would be, again, removing items A through D and alphabetizing the balance to A through H. So that would be an amended consent agenda.
Thank you. So no, the consent agenda are lower level things. They're block parties. We block off streets. There's some things such as, minutes from the last meeting and DPW purchase of a vehicle of that. So we try to put it all out there. Before it was online. Now we put it in the package so you can see it. We have asked for the last few times the city manager to go through those. I will ask, do we want to go through each and every one of those today with the city manager or go ahead and approval of the consent agenda the way it is?
It's up to George.
George?
Nope, it's at council's pleasure.
Okay.
If you want me to read it, I will. If not.
So I'm looking for a motion to have it read or to approve the consent
And
agenda.
I'm fine with Judge not reading, but just as a footnote is that there are important things on a consent agenda. But they are more focused on administrative, it's from city
Right.
administration, that it doesn't require discussion. The
Yeah.
one that we have before us, for example, is related to the adoption of Oakland County's hazard mitigation plan.
Right.
We need to approve as submitted. This is a requirement from Oakland County. But what's in that and some of the
Right, is
new
important.
is
You're
very important. But it's
But
just
we don't
not
have
a
the
matter
answer.
that, we have discretion over other than we need to approve it. So
With that, we have put this up on the agenda now. Why don't you just read through those things so everybody knows what's on it? On a
So
brief basis.
I can even try to do the renumbering.
Okay.
New item A, consideration of DPW vehicle purchase. Item B, consideration of the adoption of Oakland County's hazard mitigation plan.
Right.
Item C, consideration of street closure request for Summerside Court Block Party. Item B, C, D. D, consideration of contract extension
Should be
for
a test.
removal of excess material. Item E, consideration of request to close Eaton Drive for a block party. Item F, consideration of proclamation for Constitution Week. Item G, wait a minute, is one not
Yeah,
numbered?
that's
Yep.
right.
Okay,
Mhm.
G, consideration of a request to replace ribbons for Ovarian Cancer Awareness Month. And item H, consideration of Maplewood Block Party request. Those are all the items on the consent agenda for council consideration.
So I have nothing to add or delete from that list. Is there anybody else from council? Then I'm looking for a motion to go forward.
Motion to approve as amended.
Or
So we have a motion properly supported. Any other discussion? Great. Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. Great, we have a consent agenda. So now we will go on to section 7, public hearings. We have no public hearings tonight. We got through with them. Number 8, unfinished business. We got through all of our business last time. Almost. Number 9, this is new business now. So if you want to talk on these subjects, I will ask you at the end of each subject. The first one, and who is going to bring up for the dog licenses? Who is the
That'll be
expert on that? I'm looking forward for you and you can stay right there. This
Yep.
is regarding the dog license, chapter 10. Why don't you tell us about that?
Sure. Our office and the city clerk's office handles the dog licenses, and currently the city of Northville issues dog licenses that are valid for 1 year. And they are contingent upon up-to-date rabies vaccinations. And as you know, maybe if you're a dog owner, many times when you go to a vet, you go get a 3-year vaccination. And we are trying to improve our processing and allow dog owners to have a option of a 1 year or a 3-year. And so we need to change the ordinance to allow for that. And so we're going to be doing that with similar practices that Oakland County does. And we believe this is a great opportunity for them to purchase that to coincide for the rabies vaccinations and for remembering. A lot of times we forget, it's just like, oh my gosh, where am I at? And then that process. And the biggest thing that came up is, for instance, if someone comes into the town, maybe they only have 2 years left, you can only purchase 1 year. So it has to be contingent upon if you have a 3 years vaccination to purchase a 3-year license.
Right.
So the other thing that we wanted to add in that, and based on my experience, is to allow some carve outs for exemptions. To allow like leader dogs where they don't have to pay for it, corporate dogs, or anything like that where there's use for a blind person, deaf person, that we want to make sure that they can get them, but have some waivers of fees and things. So we thought that would be a useful thing to have in our city. So we're presenting that for first reading tonight. To update this, the city attorney and police chief have reviewed the proposed ordinance and believe it's acceptable for this evening.
Right. And I'm sure that's why everybody's here tonight for the dog license. So in our house, that's one of the most important things with dog licenses. And I'm usually a little bit late, so I get tuned up every year. But now it'll be great. So I'll only get tuned up every 3 years when I'm a little bit late. So thank you for that. Is there any comments from council members on the dog license policies and procedures here tonight?
This one seems pretty uncontroversial.
I think it's pretty straightforward. Is there anybody that has comments on the dog license? Oh,
I'm minor, but I would expect that we're going to see fee schedules come in. Okay. And we
Yes,
don't
at
have that
the
here.
next one, yes, there'll be
Okay.
fee schedules.
And thank you. I'll just say thank you again. I love seeing these ordinances come to us.
absolutely.
Now, it's almost every meeting, updating our ordinances. So thank you.
So we're trying to go through all of our policies and procedures and our ordinances one by one. Some have been there for 25 years, 40 years. We're looking at every ordinance and trying to modernize it out there in the whole bit. Is there any comments? Is there any other comments from council members? Super. Is there any comments from the audience on this agenda item? Dog licenses going once, going twice? Okay, I'm closing it off for the dog license activity of life. So with that, you have a sample motion in your package to go forward with this. Do we have that on the floor? You looking for that motion, are you not, clerk?
All right. Motion to approve introduction and first reading of the proposed amendments to the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 10, Animals, Article 2, Dog License as presented with the second reading and adoption scheduled for September 5th, 2024.
Support.
So we have a motion properly supported. Any other discussion on this motion?
I just looked at the old ordinance in 1999, so this hasn't been touched for
1999.
25
So
years.
We're looking at
Thank you.
just about every ordinance, going 20, 25 years back, and some are 50 years. So we're modernizing the world. So good. We had a motion properly supported. Any other discussion?
That's almost as old as our fire
I
hydrants.
know, this is true. Some of our fire hydrants are 1898. I just want to let you know. And we had wood pipes up to about 22 years ago in some areas. Okay, with that, I'm looking for a motion to go forward. You gave it. We supported
We're
it.
fine.
We have no other discussion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Good, we have the motion. And it's approved. Let's go to the next one. We are talking on tree preservation. This is the first of 2 times we're going to talk about tree preservation. Why don't you let us know a little bit from the city standpoint, if there's anybody else that needs to talk on this, we can go in great detail on the second reading, but tell us about the updating of this ordinance.
So while I'm up here tonight presenting this is truly a product of the Planning Commission. They've been working on this for over a year. The subcommittee consisting of Tom Barry, Steve Kirk, and Anna Mary Lee Volek, and I saw 2 of the 3 of them here tonight. In summary, the revised ordinance is intended to reduce the burden on a single-family residential property owner when it comes to removing a tree. So there's exemptions in the ordinance. If you don't need a permit, the threshold is now higher. It's currently 6 inches. Now it's 8 inches for an exempt tree. The process or the procedure is broken down into single family with construction or no construction, and the processes are slightly different, but overall the mitigation requirement has gone away. So that was a pretty big burden when someone had to either replant new trees up to a certain amount of calipers per what was removed or pay into the city's environmental resources trust fund. The non-residential portion of the ordinance is mostly staying the same. Which mitigation would be required for commercial properties or potential payment into the trust fund. There is now a new process in the ordinance to establish champion trees, which are exceptional specimens. And there's a nominating process and an approval process, and then a process to remove a champion tree. I was very brief, but if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Great. Let me start. We're trying to simplify it for citizens. It's still a little bit more complicated for developers. I see some developers here, but that's okay. But from citizens, we're trying to make it as easy as possible for the tree ordinances. It was pretty unique and exciting. This is Northville. We are big tree huggers, and we are in our family too. But we're trying to make it easier and more logical so you can understand it. So appreciate that. And I did see Tom Barry, Jim Porter, Anna Mary Lee. They have put a lot of work into this. Jim Porter is our arborist that looks at all these trees. What's that? Porterfield. What did I say? Porter. Oh, Porterfield. He's a great friend of mine. God forbid, He was a shot put king for about 50 years. So he could probably shot put me out of here and stuff. But he looks at all of our champion trees. He's the chairperson of the tree champions. And I thank everybody, including Nancy Darga, who kind of touches everything out there. So from my standpoint, it's work that's been well needed for quite some time. And I thank you from the city administration and all those involved. So
all the credit goes to the Planning Commission.
Yep,
and
they're doing a great job.
They did unanimously recommend approval of this.
Excellent. Any other comments from council?
Yeah, only thing I'll echo the appreciation to Steve, Tom, Anna Mary Lee, and Jim. I know a lot of work went into this. We've had at least 3, 4, depending on how you consider friendly neighborhood debates. People come in here to talk about challenges with larger trees on their property, the financial burden associated.
Yes.
And I think that this accomplishes the goal of reducing the burden on single family residential property owners. It also does permit 2 trees over 8 inches to be removed, which allows flexibility, but won't allow for tree clearing. So it walks that line, I think, very well to give people flexibility over their property, but not open the door to just start wiping out trees across Northville. And I appreciate all the hard work that went into this. So thank you very much.
Excellent.
Yeah, I'll just add on that. We had a resident who lived on Rogers who had a house or a tree that was encroaching into their house, and the bill to remove that tree was exceptionally high. And that resident did not have the ability to take care of that and was concerned about
the ongoing structural fidelity of the home. I don't think that's at all what is meant and what we should be doing. And what we have in place from Planning Commission to alleviate that burden, but also keep in place the landmark trees that we have is absolutely the right balance. So I know they put a lot of work into it. They could have been doing anything other than that, but they chose to do that. And I think the community is better off for it. So thank you.
Let's not give them ideas, Andy.
And again, I'm going to pile on with the thank yous. And I think what's unique with this particular tree preservation ordinance, because it is dense. We tried to make it is easier, but it needs
It's a
to be dense.
robust ordinance.
Yeah, I mean,
Robust.
the dog license is what, 2 pages? This is 27. Yeah, I mean, so it needs to be.
It's not a competition.
No, but I mean, just comparatively, it's a lot. But what's unique about this is would not normally be under Planning Commission's purview. This is not within the zoning ordinance. It's a general ordinance. But they thought it was so important that they took it on. And that is wonderful. They have other items also, but because this was a heavy load to do this. And so in reading through this, I would say my only, I'll follow up with conversation with Justin. And because it's complicated and because we want to make it user-friendly, I'm going to focus on following there's a really nice process flow chart in here to help you work through these 25 plus pages. And I'm going to actually go through that. And that would be the only place to provide that very clear roadmap and see if there's ways to even basically guide within those flow charts. So, but the flow chart is very helpful because it's dense. But thanks for everyone that was involved in doing this. So.
The best part is we're going to repeat all the thank yous again in 2 weeks. So.
Oh, yeah, this is true.
Well, I'll
It
save
comes back
mine.
again for the second reading, doesn't it? Would you like to?
No, I'm going to save mine.
Save it for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
We'll start with you on that one. Great. I will close off comments from the council. Is there any comments from those in the audience tonight on this? Going once, and I thought you were here for the trees. Going twice. Okay, I'm closing off public comment on the trees. You have a motion in front of you in the package, and I'm looking forward to that to be put on the.
I move to approve the first reading and introduction of the amendment to Chapter 14, Article 2 of the Code of Ordinances to amend the tree preservation ordinance with the second reading and adoption scheduled for September 5th, 2024.
So we have a motion. I'm looking for support of that motion. In support of the motion, Councilperson Carter. Any other discussion on this motion? Great. I think we can do this too. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All not in favor, say nay. You have your
Thank you,
your
Justin.
forward motion on that one. Great. So we will go to section C, consideration of approving traffic control order 2402, restricting parking on the south side of West Main Street. Tell us about that, Chief. It's all yours.
Good evening again, Mayor and City Council. Tonight before you is a consideration to approve traffic control order 24-02. That is for to put in no parking on West Main on the south side of the street, 310 feet east of Rogers. So historically, how this came about was that residents in the area were having issues with leaving their driveway or not knowing where to park there. So I had our Traffic Improvement Association come in and take a look at it. And they did recommend making that area no parking. Looking back at past traffic controllers, and it's kind of historically, it does appear that was no parking. Historically, it just seems that there are some signs that have been removed. So now there's only 2 signs left there, which makes it very confusing for people. Councilman Krenz, you had talked at last meeting too about monitoring that situation. We also went out and talked to the residents in that area and did get some feedback. Most, if not all people were in favor of making this no parking. And then also another thing that came up is on the north side of the street, which is no parking 7 to 4, and that's every day. By making that a 2-hour parking instead of that. So that was, that did come up in a couple of people that we did talk to. So that's something we can monitor down the road. And if that comes up, we can bring it back to council. But approval of this will implement that traffic controller to allow no parking in the area on the south side of south side of Main, 310 feet east of Rogers. So if there are any questions, I can answer them.
Yeah, maybe I'll start. Chief,
Go
thank
right
you. I know last time when we discussed, and former Chief Petrus too, thank you. To go take a look at the provenance of the law there,
Mhm.
what it used to be, there was construction and demolition, had signs been displaced, and then to ask the community what they could live with there. And I really appreciate taking the time, and that's what makes this city a special place to live. One of the primary issues on Main in that area is that employees at the nursing home located on the north side will often park their entire shifts there.
Sure.
When there's a perfectly viable lot in the back,
Mhm.
and that creates a disturbance in the amount of parking and sight lines, even in areas where they're not allowed to park. So the idea of 2-hour parking is, if we can vigorously enforce that, to compel the employees at that establishment to park in the lot that's in the back. So they can smoke or whatever it is that they do, as some of the residents would claim, that get off the street. I fully support the 2-hour limit on that, and I hope that we can keep an eye on it, that, and teach them to, adhere to that. So everything you did, great. Thank you. And I'm glad you got the voice of the residents.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Anything else?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I'll go second. This is gonna be like the most small town comments of all time, because I used to live on the south side of the street. And I now live on the north side of the street. Yes, I moved
Same
directly
street.
across the street.
Across the street.
And one of the people you talked to that brought up the 2-hour parking was actually my wife. So
Excellent.
I concur with her. I'm an intelligent man.
Great.
But I can confirm from a south side perspective that the policy was always to have no parking on that side. And in part, if you have parking on both sides, it becomes pretty congested. What happened was a couple of signs over the years came down. People all just followed the no parking because that's what we'd all done. But then new people moved into the neighborhood and it caused confusion because they hadn't been there forever and didn't know that was just the rule. I do support, and Councilmember Krenz raised the point. It's rare probably to have somebody come and say, open up parking in front of my house, but parking does get built up with the school there, Star Manor further down on Main. So I think having a 2-hour option that wouldn't necessarily result in long-term parking for the employees, but does give short-term drop-off residents that need it, gives that option on the north side, I would support. And I don't want to do traffic control order on the fly here, so I would say let's focus on the south side. But if we do want to revisit and come back and bring that forward, I would support that in the future.
Great. Great. Any other comments from council?
And I'm not getting any over houses on Main. Good. I'm locked in.
Any comments from those in the audience on this traffic control opportunity? Going once, going twice? I'm closing off section C there. You have a proposed motion in your package. I'm looking for that motion to be on the table. Do we have that?
I move to approve traffic control order 2402 that restricts parking on the south of West Main Street for a distance of 310 feet east of Rogers Street, ending at the driveway of address number 521.
Support.
So we have a motion properly supported. Any other discussion on this motion? Seeing none, I think we can do this also. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. You have a motion?
Thank you very
Go
much.
forward. You bet. Thank you very much. Chief, we're going to go to 9D, and if Wendy Longpre is here in the house. We had a whole presentation at the last meeting on this. I've asked her to, again, have a condensed presentation tonight because not everybody might have heard it, but if you would let us know about this and we'll have some discussion on it, please. Go right ahead.
Absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you again. At your last meeting, we discussed a recommendation from staff to award a construction contract for the River Park. The River Park project is part of the Downs development. We will be daylighting a quite lengthy section of the Rouge River. So we'll be creating a new riverbed and then abandoning the existing underground concrete culvert. And then developing a park around that new riverbed. The expenses are funded through the brownfield, I believe, with some support from a $2.5 million allocation from County and a $1 million grant from Eagle, which is specifically for cleaning up any contamination and ensuring that's done appropriately. The reason this contract is in front of you is because we're looking to use some of those ARPA funds to pay for the funding of this project. The contract amount that is in front of you today is $8,962,925.90. You'd think they could have found that extra 10 cents in there somewhere, but we'll give them the 90 cents. The amount of funds that are available from the ARPA funds for this expenditure are approximately $1 million. So the ARPA funds are really spending on funding only a fraction of the cost of this project. But the requirements for using those funds requires that we be in front of you, that the contract be held by the city of Northville. So on Thursday, May 23rd, bids were opened for this project and 3 bids were received. Hunter Pasteur and its construction manager, Franklin Construction Company, conducted an extensive bid review and value engineering process to clarify the various bidders' assumptions and ensure that the greatest value was received for the work. This is a typical bid review process, and it is in alignment with our bidding and purchasing policies and procedures here at the city. The recommendation is to award a bid to award a contract to BNV Earth Movers for the project. When this contract first came in front of you, there was a number of questions that were raised, and I offered a presentation to you all identifying, or answering some of those questions. I won't go through that again, but the presentation was included in your packet and so is available online as well. Since this item was deferred at your last meeting, there have been some additional questions raised, and so I did want to share some information about those. I also wanted to mention that we have the city attorney here who will be offering some comments associated with this. Yep. And then we do have our director of public works here as well, if there's anything associated that you have questions on. So there's been a number of questions raised about the permitting requirements and the permitting process. The City of Northville permitting requirements are outlined in the planning and zoning code. The River Park project will require local grading and construction permits. The construction permits are for installation of the bridges. The grading permits are for the site work. It also requires a number of state, federal, and county permits. Each time we meet with our construction coordination team, we review the status of all of those permits and what is outstanding. So this project will not be issued a grading permit until we have the appropriate supporting permits in line. And so just to reassure council of that. Then some other questions that were raised were associated with the river channel concrete and how that was going to be addressed. The treatment of the concrete that's associated with the river channel is detailed in the construction plans. The construction plans were developed through Siebert, Keast, and Lehner, I think, SKL. And they are the engineers on this project. And so we look to them for their expertise in determining the best way to handle these type of materials. In addition, any work that is done on the river, whether it's the existing river channel or the proposed new river channel, is regulated by Eagle, as well as there are some permit requirements through FEMA. And so with Eagle being the regulatory agency, they will review and approve any plans and any program for how that concrete is addressed. There are some items that we are working to clarify associated with that. When we look at the plans, our engineers, OHM, have indicated that they would like to see some additional detail on the process that is proposed for dealing with the concrete. This river channel area, in terms of abandoning the concrete culvert, that's not planned to happen until June of next year. So we have an extensive amount of time to work with the engineers on this project, as well as the regulating agencies, and make sure we're all on the same page for the best way to address the concrete. Any questions that you currently have today on how to handle that? There isn't any need for that to hold up this contract award tonight. One of the reasons that I want to stress that is if we continue to postpone this work, we're going to lose the season. And with this particular project, we want to build it, give it time for the plants to establish before we move the water flow into the channel. So if we lose this season, we're pretty much going to lose a year. We also are running up against some deadlines for use of the ARPA funds. So what we are proposing from a staff standpoint is if council sees moves forward with awarding this contract, we are able to issue a grading permit for the river channel only, and then have time to work out any questions regarding the concrete and how that's treated before we issue the demolition permit for that structure. And as I indicated, I do want to really stress that Eagle is the regulating agency associated with this. And we have engineers who are recommending the procedures. We rely on both the engineers and Eagle in reviewing and approving these processes. Another question that was raised is how we are addressing some storm sewer leads that come from Bealtown. And this is an important one for us because, we don't want to do any work in this park that is going to impact storm sewers and how large areas of the city drain. So currently there are 2 storm sewer leads that come out of Bealtown, and they tap directly into the existing concrete culvert riverbed. So that's where everything goes to. As we excavate the new riverbed, those leads are going to be exposed and are going to need to be relocated. So our engineers have designed a new sanitary sewer structure that will be constructed as part of the river project. That concrete structure currently was not reviewed by DEQ in the first round of reviews. So we are going to have to do a permit revision for that. We have our engineers, OHM, have received plans from HP's engineers. And once we have those reviewed and in a position where they are comfortable, and I believe they're in process of doing that now, that will be forwarded to the DEQ for a revision on the existing permit. But again, that's no reason to hold up progress on this project because permit revisions there's a process for that. It's a standard process, and that's something that we're working through. But at no time will those storm sewers be blocked or impeded from functioning. They will be functioning the
Only
entire
storm
time.
sewers?
It's only storm.
Great.
They will be functioning the entire time.
Excellent.
Air monitoring, there is some questions about whether air monitoring will be continued. And we are in discussions right now with HP and our air monitoring subcontractors about the best procedures to use and how best to get the information we need. Sometimes there is a lag gathering information and receiving test results. And so we want to make sure that whatever process we use gives us the data that we need in a timely fashion. And so there's a number of different options for us, and that's something that we want to look at further But we will update you on that as we make decisions along those lines. And then one of the key things also was we talked about a construction operations plan. A construction operations plan is required as part of our standards for grading and building permits. The construction operations plan basically identifies where things on the site are going to be, how the site is going to be managed, how you will access the site, how the site will be protected, all of those sorts of things. We want to make sure that a contractor or an owner has thought through all of those aspects of a project. So that is an administrative process. It's a process that is done after a contract is awarded, but before a permit is issued. I included in your packet a draft operations plan so that you could see how things were going to be laid out on the site. I have had a conversation with Mayor Pro Tem Moratsky Brown about some suggested items that she would like to see clarified or added. A number of things associated with dust control, a few things associated with fencing, and then also some adjustments in the map itself to just be more clear on what the map shows. And so we will be requesting those changes be made before we issue that grading permit. A key thing that I want to bring up about the construction operations plan is we are proposing that a construction entrance be established on the north side of the river park onto Griswold Street or from Griswold Street. And we're proposing that for a number of reasons. One of the key reasons is it allows us to have the river park be a self-contained site.
So that's in addition to the one off of Center Street.
That's in addition
Okay.
to the one
Okay.
off of
Okay.
Center Street.
Okay.
It allows the river park to be a self-contained site. That allows us to regulate it a little better, have a little more control. It also helps us to identify if there are issues happening. We have a better way of identifying, where those things are taking place and where the responsibility lies. Another real benefit of looking at a north exit is that it requires, or that will shorten the distance that trucks have to travel across the site in order to leave the site. If we have trucks traveling east to west, that's a lot of time that they're moving through a large portion of the site that isn't paved, that isn't under, any kind of vegetative cover. That's a lot of dust to be generated and a lot of opportunity to pick up more stuff that can be transported off onto the site or off onto the roadway. There also is going to be a lot of traffic on these two sites in terms of truck traffic, both hauling material in and having material leave. And being able to divide that and have two different ways for the traffic to go helps alleviate the stress on some of those major roads. By exiting onto Griswold Street, these trucks will be almost immediately on a trucking route. And those trucking routes in Wayne County are almost built like you would build a, airport landing strip. They have substantial substructure and they are made to hold up to this kind of traffic. So, but that is a key thing that we're looking at doing with the construction plan. Mayor Pro Tem had a couple of questions about the contract that I just want to touch on real lightly. There were a few attachments that you see were sort of blank or didn't include information. One was related to the bonds, and these are the construction bonds. So there's a construction performance bond, a labor and material bond, and then a maintenance bond. And so those bonds are secured after the contract is awarded. So in our project manual or in our project folders, we'll keep all of those bonds and they will become part of the contract. But right now we don't have them because you don't secure bonds. You can't secure them until after the contract is awarded. The second piece is you don't have a copy of the insurance forms. That's because I had forwarded those to OHM to review to ensure we had adequate insurance coverage. And I have a couple of questions. So I'm still getting some questions answered from the contractor. So that's why those weren't included, but those are part of the contract. That's a lot of information. And does anybody have any questions about that before I'm actually going to turn it over to our attorney to
Let me
comments?
just reiterate, she mentioned Eagle. Eagle's kind of like the EPA for the state of Michigan. You know,
Oh,
it's Environmental Great Lakes Energy Board. So when they say Eagle, that's what that is. So that's
Yeah.
who we report up to. Then the county and the state and the governor has meetings with them. I had the meeting with the governor and them about other opportunities, but envision that as the state of Michigan kind of EPA. So, you know, when we say Eagle, that's what it is.
Thank you
So-
for that clarification. I still refer to it frequently as DNR, Department of Natural
That's
Resources.
correct. It was the old DNR.
That's the agency that reviews and approves environmental permits. That's related to wetlands, floodplain, sewers, water, anything associated with that. That's the department at the state that oversees that. Then because there are some floodplains here and on this site, we are working with FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency, because, well, HP is working with FEMA to do a map adjustment because as we move the river to a new place, that's going to need to move the floodplain to a new place. So we're working with them to make those map revisions.
And Wendy, just to clarify, because you touched on it, but I know it was a big part of our brownfield discussion. For that floodplain, we are going to be in a permit certifying that it's a 100-year floodplain.
I don't know the answer.
I
to that
believe it
question.
is it not? I have Hunter Pastoria,
Yeah.
to my knowledge. I try not to forget too much. And before we have a lot of questions for Wendy, let's have, you mentioned, so we can have questions for both of you. Tony's here and he just went to a hearing on policies and procedures that might answer some of our questions. And then we'll open it up for comments from us up here and then public comment on that. So you were just at a hearing for policies and procedures. Tell us about that. In fact, it was 2 weeks ago today, I believe, on a Monday, was it not? Tony?
Yeah, that's correct. And just briefly, I want to go back to something that Wendy mentioned to make sure that the council understands the structure of this contract. So although we do have that $9 million price tag in front of us today, we are only in this contract until the ARPA funds are expended. So this contract will terminate after that $800 to $1 million. And then Hunter Pasteur will enter into a subsequent contract for the remaining about 8 million. So I just wanted to make sure everyone understood that piece of it.
Right.
There was a hearing 2 weeks ago today on the lawsuit regarding the development. It was the plaintiffs in that matter were seeking an injunction that would have the effect of stopping the development, any further development on the site during the pendency of the litigation, which would be a multi-year delay. The court did a very thorough review, I believe, in prior to making her determination. One finding that she had to make was that the plaintiffs were suffering from irreparable harm as a result of the dust and the oil leak that occurred on the site. The court found that they failed to make showing of irreparable harm and primarily relied upon the testing, the air quality testing that's been ongoing by the city and by the developers, both as to the content of the air, which it found there was no toxic content, and then the particulate density, which the court relied upon the testing that said that it was consistent with applicable state and federal laws. The court then went to a likelihood of success on the merits, which the plaintiffs also had to prove. There are 3 claims, operative claims within the lawsuit. There's a claim of a public nuisance, a claim of a private nuisance, and a claim of a violation of the MEPA. The court again found the plaintiffs failed to provide a likelihood of success on the merits on any of those claims against any of the defendants being us and our 2 developers, Hunter Pasteur and Toll Brothers. And did a thorough analysis on each one, again, primarily relying on those testing numbers, which are uncontroverted evidence, essentially showing that, again, there's no toxic content within the air that was tested and that the particulate levels were consistent with all state and federal laws. So as a result, the court denied the injunction, which means that development will continue over the pendency of the lawsuit, which I would expect would be the next year or 2. And so moving forward, we're going to go into discovery on all those matters and all those things asserted within the complaint in that matter. I'm happy to answer any questions or whatever you want, Jeff.
Wendy brought that up. I thought it'd be a good time. So if you have questions for either or comments for Tony or for Wendy, this is time for council. Then I'm going to open it up for comments, 3 minutes of time. So
I suppose I'll start.
go right ahead.
I'll get me out of the way so I can just watch after this. All right, so 2 weeks ago, we were in here, we put a pause on this. There were concerns within the community. We represent the community, but we also believe that the development should proceed as long as it meets all requirements, federal, state, all regulatory ordinance and everything else, as is their right. So over the course of those 2 weeks, we do have the legal opinion in place. One other item, Tony, I asked for was any reviewing of anomalies in the contract proceedings and how the contract was awarded. Is there anything we found that was extraordinary that we should be aware of?
Sure, absolutely. So I did review the process of the low bid and the subsequent refinement of those bids. I think everything is consistent with all city ordinances as well as state law. I've overseen procurement with, involving complex federal grants, state grants, things that we're dealing with in this particular contract as a result of the ARPA funding. I think everything is wholly consistent.
Okay, so I'm glad, by the way, I'm glad we took that 2 weeks. I think the community deserved it so we could go back and answer some of these questions. A few more things. The new sanitary structure for Beal storm drains that requires revision and permitting. Will that be sourced out of brownfield funds to execute that when the time comes?
All permitting fees are paid for by the developer.
Okay.
And I can't speak to what's reimbursable under the brownfield or not.
I'll ask it a different way. Is the city going to be paying for that infrastructure build out?
It will be part of the cost of that infrastructure build out is part of the cost of the River Park construction.
Okay.
It's already in it.
So regarding dust control and fencing, I think that as an elected board here, we need to be careful not to weigh into means and methods. I don't think we are experts and we are not supposed to be. But what I would like to propose, as Wendy, as you had put it, is in order to understand as these dirt trucks come through, it's very possible there might be debris during the grading and everything else. It might be debris. I think in order to make sure that we trust but verify with the developer, that the air monitoring remain in place, at least in those areas. And then we get the quickest turnarounds possible because we have an obligation to the community to look for any upticks beyond the EPA regulation and then vigorously go after that. But to your point so far, that has, I think, only been breached one day on one sensor back in June. But if we're looking at anything, I want to be able to keep that in place and I want them to know we're watching. Also on the northern entrance, I'm going to be very interested in, yeah, please, Wendy.
A point of clarification, there are 2 different types of air monitoring, one for contaminants and one for particulates. Are you interested in seeing both continue or one or the other?
I want to have that discussion. I think both are relevant. So I would like to see what that means. I want to trust but verify because we have an obligation to represent the community and make sure there's no undue burden here. Also on the northern exit onto Griswold, just looked at Google Maps. I want to make sure that that exit is as far north as possible for a couple reasons, up towards Katy, reasonably so, for two reasons, so that you can have the ability to put in design measures for like mud traps and everything up and, you know, limestone before we get out there. But also, if we can go as far north, we can be more than 500 feet away from the closest house in Bealtown, which is at 404 Beal. So if we can go as far north as possible on Griswold so that we can avoid that, we can discuss that outside here, but maybe just take that a note. It sounds like we have months to best establish how to manage the culvert. Bar Engineering, to the best of my understanding, as an engineer myself, their principals are professional engineers by trade, correct? Or the people who will be executing are professional engineers?
My understanding is SKL is the consultant who will be working on this, but both BAR and SKL are professional engineers.
So what
yeah.
that means for the community, because I work with professional engineers in my day job, this is an important point here, is professional engineers must put their seal on any plan that they come up with and they propose, and that includes anything to do with the culvert. When you are a professional engineer, what you are allowing yourself to do after taking rigorous testing is open yourself up to personal liability should something go wrong. Is that correct?
I honestly can't speak
Yeah, I
to
think that is-
liability.
That's to Tony.
That-
That is correct. That is
Okay,
correct.
So now what we're looking at, this is an important point
That
here,
is.
that the engineers responsible for the design of this whole park are professionals, engineers who are personally liable for the output.
Absolutely.
So they are held personally accountable. They cannot hide behind the company. They will be, it is upon them and their professional reputations and exposure. So I think that's a very important point, and I'm very glad that that's doing that. So when it comes to the culvert, I don't think we need to establish the right execution on that now. I know there are many theories, but I want to rely on what the experts come up with over time. And I don't think in any way should that limit the activity we have to do here. As to your point, we have months to sort this out. So I think that we need to keep an eye on it. But then again, we also have to have the humility to show that the professional engineers with the oversight of Eagle, who will not allow that work to proceed until it's approved by Eagle, will execute that work. And I think I want to stand out of the way and let the professionals and the governing agency, the Michigan EPA, handle that. I want to make sure that the construction plan does include remedies for mud tracking onto Katy and Griswold and even down towards Beal. That's absolutely critical. This gets close to means and methods, but the outcome needs to be that we have to have the streets that are passable without debris. And that if street sweepers are required and if the city's engaged on that, that we are reimbursed for any additional work that occurs there to keep those streets passable for the community. Fully enforce, this is an expectation here, is that we're going to fully enforce the ordinance and standards to maintain the quality of life in the Beal community during this. I do not want to create any undue burden as part of it. I think that's an expectation that we have, that we're going to meet ordinance on that, and then we're going to monitor it too. As we deliberate tonight, I already discussed bar engineering. And I think that as far as I understand at this point, we can go further into dust if we need to, pending how public comment goes. But I'm very comfortable with where we are. And Wendy, your presentation and your work up till now. And by the way, also, I do want to tip my hat to the Planning Commission and to the River Task Force. These are your neighbors who have been working for, I was on Planning Commission in 2019. So 6 years on this. This project has not been rushed through. This project is probably the most scrutinized project in the state of Michigan. I think the mayor can confirm that.
650 hours of deliberation.
650 hours of deliberation, and a lot of the heavy lifting has been done by our neighbors who are in the room with us. And when this project is complete, the benefit to Bealtown and the surrounding community and the environmental impact it'll have on the Rouge and the downstream of Rouge is going to be generational and extraordinary. And tonight's the night. And I'll just reinforce one more thing, Mayor. This comes with $0 of taxes from existing residents because of the way the financial instruments are in place. This is an absolute win for this community. And I couldn't be happier to vote in favor of this when the time comes. But we do have to monitor, and we do have to make sure that we have an obligation to the Beal community and the surrounding residents that no undue burden is done. And I believe, as the judge said, Tony, it's not zero. It was nuisance level or below. It's not nuisance level, but it is not a zero requirement, but it's below EPA standards. And as long as you are below EPA standards, you can't really justify like, as long as you maintain below EPA standards. I don't have the words right in front of me, Tony, but that's what we need to do. And I want to track and I want to keep my eyes on them at all times to make sure that that doesn't change. So I apologize. I was long-winded, but I think that was very important. I just wanted to set the ground.
And that's,
Absolutely.
that is absolutely correct, Councilperson Krenz. And I did want to just elaborate on one note that you mentioned, that where we did have one test that exceeded particulate density. Importantly, that was the monitor that was on the west side of the section west of Center. And it was on a day when we had prevailing easterly winds at a strong amount. And so the determination was that they came from west of the project, which is to say the dust was not coming from the site itself.
And if we do have those problems, I fully expect that we are going to compel the developer to put design controls in place to come back into standard.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I would also just want to clarify one thing if I could, Wendy, and if I'm wrong, someone should correct me, but the proposed entrance is on Beale Street going up onto Griswold. Beale will be closed across the bridge so that no traffic coming into the site from the Beale neighborhood or going out into the Beale neighborhood for the duration, so that the Beale neighborhood will not have any pass-through traffic for construction at all. The benefit of that is that the stretch of Griswold going up to Katy will be closed to traffic, only open for construction traffic, which if there is any nuisance of sort of mud coming off of the trucks, if it gets past the mud mats or precautions, there's time to see that and then fix it and then take care of the mud or problems before it gets to where the general public will be trafficking. So we think it's a good plan because of that. And then we would, of course, know if you have the sites divided, who's responsible for the mud and who would be responsible for paying to clean it up. So we think for accountability, it's a very good move. So I want to clarify that. Thank you.
And George Royer, well, just is, so when it was proposed, you know, that this was going to be the construction operation plan and the egress for this, George described it to me last week as, you know, originally it was, well, everything's going to be off center. And George, help me. The way the plan is, it's going to be three.
So for our
construction
purposes,
operations.
there's actually going to be, this can be broken up into different constructions, but for the river park will be somewhat isolated from the rest of the construction, which is good. You're going to be managing it as a separate project, which benefits both sides because Toll Brothers will be working, putting in infrastructure, putting in streets and starting their construction. So they really do not want construction traffic from the river park crisscrossing their site on a regular basis. It also is going to interfere with their construction. But we also want to know if there is dirt getting onto Center Street, we want to know who's responsible. So this gives better accountability by dividing the site in half, or not even in half. By dividing the site along these site lines, we'll know who to hold accountable for what. And it really gives much more clear delineation for that construction company, how to manage their own site. So I think it really, for accountability, is a much better way of going. And we would expect that HP to the north will have a separate site, Toll will have a separate site, and the River Park will be a separate site as well.
So, yeah, and I really appreciate the way this just makes sense versus just center for many reasons. So this is the construction site operations plan as it relates to the river park. But what and George, my hope is that as these move along fairly quickly, we will be kept apprised of it, but city administration will have two other construction site operations plan. One for along East Katy. I mean, generally, right? Where currently the Stante is doing the earth moving in there and infrastructure. And then there'll be the Toll Brothers, which is the south of the New Beale. And then also includes the old farmer's market site. Is that correct, George? That's how you're envisioning it generally?
Generally, I think, Toll is one site, whether it's on either side of Center.
No, but I'm just visually, it would
Yes.
include both. So, and I think that helps with accountability. It also helps with their own site management for those three distinctly different development areas. The reason I say quickly is because Stante has been working without a construction site operations plan in place, formally as required by ordinance. And then Toll Brothers, once a Renaissance is out, Renaissance didn't have it. So when Toll Brothers takes over that site, the demolition contractor is done. Toll Brothers will have a construction site operations plan as well. So, so that from a process standpoint, is that, you know, if you rewind back, like everything's off Center Street, no, it's not going to be that way anymore. And I personally think I think it's a good plan that George has put forward on how to manage this. We just need those construction site plans in place. So is it okay if I take over?
Yep, continue.
So one is, and I really appreciated Wendy was able to tuck me in. Of course, I also talked to George last week. We had some communication there. I'm very grateful that we have a draft River Park construction plan. It actually should read the title, a River Park Construction Operations Plan that flows from what is required by ordinance. Now, the plan itself deals with things, as Wendy said, but there's other things within those standards, which is attached to the contract. So the standards are in there. And in this particular case, because we didn't have one before, I think it's good that we're now seeing it at council level, right? So we've learned a lot over the past few months. And so this helps us put it in place. One is that this is the plan as submitted by the contractor. I mean, Wendy talked to them, but this is their plan. So in talking to Wendy, this is a draft. And it is a draft that it's got to be modified. One is just work through and help me, Wendy, on some of these items. But so for example, and I'm really focusing on environmental issues here. So soil SCSC is the first item on in this plan. And then if you go down to the third bullet, it's dust control. Those are not separate. So dust control is a part of soil erosion sediment control. You have two ways. One is on the ground and the other is what's airborne. So dust control is part of SCSC. There is a larger Wayne County permit on this because of the site is so large. And so that is going to guide things on this, but we have minimum requirements as well for the city. So one is we've got the silt fence, which is required. And then there's also going to be the chain link fence with the dust screens on that. The item is, and it's the only thing in the contract now is that it says mud mat. What I suggest in talking to Wendy is we set up the expectation. We don't know what remediation is going to be required to keep that as much as can be kept before it goes onto our public streets. So mud mat might be enough. Cattle grates might not be enough. Whatever is required, that be written so that it's the expectation. How they accomplish that, that's for them to figure out. But if we've got all this mud being tracked onto our public streets, I agree with what George said that for that one segment of Griswold, you've got a little bit of time there. But also if it's a street sweeper, always in washing it in, it's going into our stormwater system and we don't need it there. It should be staying on site. So, how I think the soil erosion sediment control, Wendy's going to work with them on that to more drive it to what the expectation is for performance without dictating how many mud mats they need, if it's a cattle grate, they figure it out, but we know what we don't want to see on our public streets. So that's that. The other, as it relates to dust control, and I'm talking about them together, is related to the dust control is what we've had to date is the 2.5, it's PM 2.5, right? Which is the very small particulates. I think the unit of measure is microns, but 2.5 is really teeny. You cannot see that with the visible eye, but there can be a lot of bad stuff in it. That's help me, there's lead and really bad, and you just don't see it. The 10, there's PM 10, particulate matter 10, that is coarse material. So coarse material is what you get off a construction site when you see it looks like a dust bowl going across. The eye can see it. So typically that's not measured with an air sensor because a human can stand there and say, this is a mess and it's a dust bowl and it shouldn't be happening. So I don't believe that we need to have a air quality monitor there, right? But common sense will say if our building official or those monitoring this project are seeing dust bowls, that's under SCSC, that is not allowed. So what is required for dust control in terms of water trucks on site? Wendy and I talked, it has water hoses, sprinklers. Well, and they talk about that for 8 hours in the contract, but they're responsible for that dust mitigation 24 hours. So if they know there's a big windstorm coming up, it's not only when they're there, but it's afterward. So be looking towards that. And we know we've had problems with that, the coarse particulates, right? I'm glad that we haven't had air quality problems with the toxins, but the coarse particulates are going to be a challenge. And this isn't in a big agricultural area or suburban, undeveloped, ex-urban area. This is right next to residential homes. So close, I know Wendy's going to work with the contractor to modify this. It doesn't, in my mind, it doesn't hold up contract approval, but I just would like council to be kept abreast of however this works out and what the final is. So we'll know, everybody will know, the contractor will know what the expectations are, the city building official will know, and when we get the calls, we'll know what is supposed to be done as well. And so will our residents. So security fencing, that's fine. I think Wendy was going to look into, they mentioned there's going to be a gate on the north side. So you're going to look into what does that gate mean? And there's a hope also that the fencing with windscreen can maybe be covered a little bit. They weren't going to put it on the north side, but Beale Street homes are very close there. So we hope that there's not, again, a dust bowl going down there. So, but that's logistics and what they can do. The other, Wendy had brought to our attention last week that the expectation is that they would be, when it was appropriate, applying calcium chloride, and they didn't submit that on their plan. The other thing Wendy had wanted to include in here, and she'll work with them, is a street sweeper. So that was in your presentation last week. So you're going to work with them to remind them that they're going to need that. And again, expectation, if it's in here, it's all good. Everybody knows what needs to be done. In terms of construction site routes, I believe Wendy said they're going to, there is a photo in there that shows what their plan was. The feedback I've received is the current pedestrian safe passage is great. I think they just goofed on here. It's, if you look at the way that they submitted their plan, they've actually got the pedestrian safe passage on the other side. And so Wendy's going to get that redrawn to show that it is going to, is that, and then the trucks will be to the east of that. So that'll be reversed. As I'm looking at this map also is that even though Griswold is a truck route, as it was described, and so is South Main as you go around, the area in terms of between Beale and Main, South Main, is it still South Main there or East? I think it's East Main. When you get Griswold, that is not a truck route. So I hope that the DPW does have documented evidence of the current condition of the streets, because those do not have the heavy duty concrete under them. So it's my understanding, to the extent that there's damage done there, that has to be brought back to what it was before this activity began. So that would be that. The other is that it shows an item D in the plan, that the exit for the trucks coming out, where the exit would be right onto New Beale, is on the wrong side. It is not going to be going across the Beale Street Bridge. It is not coming out in the far east. So Wendy's going to make all those amendments to this, which are all important points. Like, we wouldn't want them coming out and driving across the Beale Street Bridge, because there is no plan by, in the brownfield redevelopment to replace that Beale Street Bridge. We want it to be intact and not degraded. So I think that's it. In terms of the one item that does need to be written to in here, but it is described in the plan, and I think that'll be okay, is that workers must understand that they park on the site. We have had a problem with workers parking along East Katy. That's the construction site operation plan for the next one. Parking is at a premium in our downtown, and we cannot have worker pickups lining a street. So I think that's in there. And I would say related to the latter part, rewind a little bit. I'm going to talk about things related to Brownfield Redevelopment Authority. John and I see another member in the audience. John and I are both on that, and we do have an approved Brownfield Redevelopment Plan. Yay. I'm really supportive of that. But when the idea of this, the stormwater management, needing to be on that east side, That was, my understanding, it was kind of an oops. And nobody realized that had to be done. So the way it is currently, and you can help, I don't think that that is currently in the brownfield plan because that wasn't known that that infrastructure work had to be done. So that probably needs to be worked out, but that is not in this contract, but just it does relate to this contractor's work. And I think part of that does come into this work area for this contractor. So I still am not clear who has to really pay for that. I know if it is going to be wrapped into the brownfield redevelopment plan, it would have to be added because it is not currently envisioned in that. Is that?
Mhm.
Yeah, so I think okay, I got a nod out there too. So on that, the other is related to the abandonment of the culvert. Councilmember Krenz said, you leave this to the engineers and those that know. And what happens with the abandonment of and what caught my eye, because we had the Wayne County permit and had this, is that we were told when we were getting descriptions in the brownfield plan that there'd be likely at least a portion of the culvert that would have to be abandoned in place. But in terms of what was going to happen to it and what was the method for abandoning it, we didn't know because there was, the environmental analysis of the river area, there was still work to be done in terms of what were the contaminants, what was the scope, what was the conditions of the culvert. So all of that was being explored. My understanding is the environmental analysis is pretty much done, although thankfully due to the $1 million grant, more was done. We never, in terms of brownfield, there was no, and I think it's still in the approval process. When brownfield met last time, the due care plan hadn't been approved by Eagle yet. Probably not. Because they're still doing testing, right? At that point in terms of the soil borings. So the reason I'm crushing may be the best, as I wrote, I'm hoping that the environmental analysis and the due care plan shows that it's okay to crush in place the abandonment. I think Eagle showed it was 80% on abandonment. The reason it's critical is that just to make sure that concrete can be broken up. And I'm assuming they're not pulverizing it to gravel here, but can it be broken up? Because once you're exposing it, this is going to be buried. So I appreciate that there's a PE stamp on it, but we're never going to know. If there's a problem under there, it's buried and leaching into soils and stuff like that. So I don't pretend to be the expert on it, but I know that we've never been able to see a due care plan. What is the assessment? Is it okay to break the concrete? I'm hoping it is, but that's never, we haven't seen that yet. Just in terms of, I don't know what the finding was. Also, soils beneath the culvert. So once you're breaking it up, we don't know that that's a virgin riverbed under there. We're not sure what stuff was buried because that river's been moved a couple times. So I don't think it holds up the contract, but what I would like, we get an update or it goes to Brownfield Redevelopment Authority and we can report out just so we get a status update once that due care plan is approved by Eagle. I understand it's a very, very complicated due care plan. And we know that they've identified toxic materials on that site. That's why it's a brownfield. So, but I just don't know as it relates to the concrete itself and what's below the concrete, how we just don't have any of those summary of findings and analysis of what the appropriate remediation is. But they can't proceed on this work. Even if we approve the contract, they can't proceed in this work until Eagle has signed off on the material, the manner of doing it, and on all the methods underlying it. So, but what I'm looking for, I'm letting you know from the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority standpoint, we haven't even seen the due care plan. Not that we need to approve it, but it gives you some assurance. What are the toxins that we found? And what is the manner how is this all going to be remediated? So I'd be looking forward, to finding out more about that in the future. But for me, it will not hold this up. I guess one of the things, and I ask this as a broad question for approval of this contract, can we have some things in there that we'll talk about, conditions, not conditional on approving the contract, but some expectations that when the construction site operation plan, which still is a living document, but when Wendy's worked with and the building official have worked, that we get to see it and see what that looks like. But I don't think it doesn't mean we can't award the contract, but how do we do this so we'll see what the progress is on working through this, actual implementation.
Yeah, we're happy to share the documents. I mean, the construction document is a public document if anyone would request it, but we certainly can share it with council as it moves forward. As we.
Yeah.
Sure, no
Well, the
problem.
construction site document may go into, and that's what, they'll go into the manner and method of it. But in terms of what is the environmental assessment to say, okay, the concrete's okay to crush, hoping it is, I think.
We can share the final determination as well, what we find in the
Yeah.
process, and it may be 6 months from now, but we certainly will.
Yeah, because would I expect to see it's dealt with somehow in the due cure plan? You know what I mean? That's versus the engineers say, here, if we're going to crush it, here's how we're going to crush it. The due cure plan says, or the environmental analysis indicates no problem. And so there's no additional due cure needed. And it's okay to crush. So that is,
Just one thing to add that kind of came to mind. In that mediation plan that you were at 2 weeks ago, wasn't it discussed, to my knowledge, that all the policies and procedures that were going on at the Downs would continue? Like we had the water management, $3 million gallons of water. Now it's going to be sprinklers, the mud mats, the calcium chloride, the sweepers. So that was addressed, that we're going to continue that.
Well, it's really through, as Pro Tem kind of referenced, like performance standards as to not so much the methodology of how you do
May
it.
or may not be those different things. Okay. Right. Okay.
and a site of this nature and as the work itself evolves,
Could be
is
different.
that the plan can change, but the key is you
Right.
start with the general expectation. It's all clear. So we don't hear, which I heard, earlier is like, well, that's not written down. Well, that's why you need a construction site operation plan. So.
Other comments from council members?
I just have quick, okay,
Sure.
John.
Go right ahead.
So I want to thank everyone this week for their ideas, comments, concerns. I appreciate it totally. I feel with confidence that Andrew, you led us to the right answer. Being excited for the project is okay, even though there's some things going on and any discomfort Beal Town has suffered. I apologize, and I want to make sure that's at the forefront with the dust and the mud. But I just want to make sure there's no environmental issues or liability to the city. So that's where I'm at with it. Okay.
Sure. And the way that the contracts are set up, you have absolute indemnity, insurance coverages, performance bonds, all of those things in place, multiple layers.
Okay.
To ensure that there's no liability that comes back upon the city.
Great. Thank you. John.
Going last with this group allows you to cut a few paragraphs off. I will spare you all my soliloquy on dust mitigation because I think we've gone deep into that, but I do appreciate all the emails, the feedback. I think we've actually all learned a great deal about dust mitigation, the need for it, the importance of it, how to enforce it. And that will continue to be a priority going forward. So I'm not going to dive into my little spiel on it, but I do appreciate all of the commentary. Jumping in, air monitoring, very simply, this is a requirement. I think on the Bealtown side, within the development and on the north side, especially during the 3-week period that we will be removing the contaminated soil. And all of that needs to be public and transparent. So as we get those reports, compile, post, make those available to all of our residents, and make sure that we're allowing people to see, for better or worse, how we're handling it, how it's going, how we're taking it off of the site. I'm not going to make everyone listen to my detailed description of the brownfield once again. I did that 2 weeks ago and there's a lot of the same people in the room, but I will highlight a couple key factors, or one big one. There is no tax impact on current residents. So what I mean by that is the funding of this is $2.5 million from the Wayne County ARPA grant, 1 million, and I know it's not part of this, but the Eagle grant that covers soil remediation. And then the rest is from the developer and the brownfield revolving or the brownfield fund, redevelopment fund, that ultimately is leveraging future tax revenues from the development itself. I think that's a very important point. And I think a lot of people have had questions about that. The details behind the brownfield, I am happy to sit down and talk. I think everyone knows that I have an obsession with this. I am happy to sit down and talk to anyone about the plan. I will also know, and I know HP loves me bringing this up every time, but all risk from a time period standpoint, if the project extends beyond 2032, and from a dollar perspective, if the cost exceeds what we had laid out during the brownfield, all of that risk lies with the developer. So that is a critical element that they are fronting the cost. We are reimbursing for that environmental cleanup with future tax revenues from the development. And if it exceeds that, they bear the risk of that additional cost. Next thing I wanted to make sure we addressed was a resident who I have a great deal of respect for, came up and brought some notable and potentially upsetting concerns around the bid process during the last meeting. A fair bid process is an absolute requirement, and any evidence of inappropriate action would be disqualifying. I know that we've had a number of meetings with the city attorney, with Wendy, our director of special projects, talking through the process. Both have reiterated today that there's no evidence of impropriety that has taken place. Obviously, there was a significant drop within the bid. A drop in the bid alone is not disqualifying. That could put us in a pretty difficult situation if we start opening the door to that. But I do want to emphasize that a fair bid process is critical and is a requirement here and in all future projects. So there was conversation that followed that, and that is something that we're going to continue to promote and require going forward. With regard to the culvert and the crushed concrete. So in my research and looking and speaking with members of our River Tech and our River Task Force team, the discussions that I found was it is standard practice to actually bury on site. There is the potential that removing that can actually lead, depending on the situation and the environment, to a larger environmental impact. However, depending on the materials that are used, you may find that you cannot leave that concrete in place, and that in and of itself, it results in an environmental impact. So I went charging in and said, prepared to say, I should say, that we need an Eagle review, we need certification, we can't be doing this as a city. And that's when George informed me that an Eagle review is required as part of this. I think that first off, it's a recognition they are the experts. We need to make sure we're engaging and leveraging them. I am not, though, saying we're handing that off. So I know as part of the discussion here, we've said, Eagle's going to say whether or not it's maintained or not. We have a role in that process too. And I think it's important to highlight because this contract will be related to the ARPA funds. So the 860 plus the contingency. So I think it's around $1 million. And then it's going to transfer over to HP and BNV. We need to make sure that we get all of the documentation of that Eagle review, the related documents that certify the environmental impact so that we can have a clear understanding and be able to articulate to our residents why the decision was made, whether it's to remove it off-site, which has implications in its own right, or to maintain it and cover it on-site. So just want to make sure we follow that. Additionally, I agree with the comments from the beginning. I would strongly encourage us just doing the grading permit only and managing that part after we've had time to get that Eagle review, work through the process. I think that actually gives us more control, given what I just laid out in terms of the handoff of the contract and how we're going to manage this going forward. The other element, it was a leading question earlier, and I'm stealing this from one of our residents, but I did do my homework and look it up. Written confirmation that the project complies with all special regulations for special flood hazard areas, SFHAs, as defined by FEMA, including areas that are inundated by a flood event with a 1% chance of being equaled or exceeded in any given year. 100-year flood. Permits are required. So we do need to make sure, and I saw a nodding from the developer earlier, we need to make sure we're getting all of that permitting. I know there's questions raised of why is the river moving? That is actually the safest and the most environmental friendly approach. You actually don't want to just slam into the concrete. You want to build up that new bed, divert that water into that new bed that's been established with 100-year, and then we can handle the other site. I think that's an important distinction, but we need to make sure we're getting that 100-year floodplain because we've got a neighborhood right there that's going to be enjoying the park and doesn't want to be feeling it in their living rooms. And then I'm going to cut out sections here. Thank you to my fellow council members. Truck routes, 24,900 tons. That is the equivalent of 49 million pounds of contaminated soil. And I know that causes stress, but that's really exciting. Like, I do think there is a moment to pause and say, we have 49 million pounds of contaminated soil in our city right now. This is one of the largest environmental cleanups in the state of Michigan, and that is a good thing. We have to do it the right way. We have to manage it. We have to enforce the rules, regulations. Enforcement's going to be the key, and I'm going to come back on that. But that is a huge positive associated with this entire effort. And not only are we removing all the contaminated soil, but we're going to get a river walk and a park out of it. These are good things along the way. Now, that said, 49 million pounds is a lot of dirt. Yes.
I just wanted to
Are you gonna
clarify.
correct my math on the fly?
No, I'm not.
Go right ahead.
But I just want to let you know that part of the additional testing that is being done under the $1 Million Eagle permit is identifying just the extent and the amount of what's contaminated. And those numbers in the bid document are sort of best guesses right now.
Yep.
And they're estimates. So those could go up and down, and there's different levels of contamination. Some needs to go to a class 2 landfill, others can go to the regular landfill. So I just want to be clear that that's not a, completely sort of contaminated soil. But
There's a lot of bad dirt there.
there is a lot of bad dirt, and anything that can get it out of the city is.
I wasn't planning to weigh it and hold accountable on that, but no, it's a fair point, and especially the fact that you have different types of contaminated soil, I do think is important because we need to make sure we're handling it the correct way. The reason I raise it, other than the good side, is it's also 700 trucks full, which means 25 to 50 per day over a 3-week period. We're going to need to be really focused, and I agree, and I like the recommendation of closing the Bealtown access, not even having that as an option, making sure we're diverting it out to Griswold directly. But we also are going to have a lot of communication, routing, planning around the implications of those trucks during that 3-week period, because that is going to have a significant impact here, and it's going to be noticeable to our residents. Overall, though, I'll come back. I do think the River Park, the pathway, there is a lot to be excited about associated with this. This is connecting our town. It connects Ford Field to Hines, and we get a lot of green space that's going to be added for our community. We just need to be really diligent with enforcement, and I appreciate all the comments that have taken place so far, because that's going to be the key to making this successful.
Absolutely. So to wind down before I open it up, just know a lot of time and energy on this. I spent numerous hours, days, weeks with Eagle, with the governor and the governor's office up there, because she is involved with this. This was the #1 development. So she understands, she gets a briefing on a weekly basis. Sometimes I have to be up there. SEMCOG is involved with the periphery, with the roundabouts and other things. We can't do this without all these partners. I'm fortunate to be on the executive team for SEMCOG. They have been partners with us through this. CWW, the Conference of Western Wayne, is 19 communities. They're ecstatic because what we do in Northville affects 19 communities. Everything is downriver from Northville. I kid about that, but we're the highest point in Wayne County. So everything we do and that bioswale helps all the flooding. So I appreciate all the partners. I'm down there about every 2 to 3 days with Scott Weaver. We brought in human resources just to manage this. He is our inspector. He is down there each and every day. Justin, who you heard from earlier, he's planning the future. Wendy is planning now as a special project manager. We have people full-time on this every day, and this is funded a lot because of the developer and the monies that are coming in through permitting and what have you. So we have a huge amount of resources looking at this and eyes every day. And they really don't like me going down there to have more eyes to come back and ask them questions. But it's been great with my hard hat on and my hard shoes and my vest on. And I'm caught on camera once in a while without my good shoes on down there. But
I thank all of those. Everybody in the state is involved with this. This can't be done without the teamwork of about 5 or 6 different groups in the entire state. And it is one of the biggest cleanups. We had the first foundry and some of the dirtiest area. We've already cleaned up so many things on those barns. There's 8-inch PVC pipe of horse crap going into the Johnson Creek. So we have cleaned all that up. So a lot of opportunity. Thank you very much. I don't have any other comments. It's all been put forward by my esteemed council members. So at this point, I'm going to open up for public comment. I would ask you to line up. Again, you have 3 minutes and your name and address, and we'll go from that. I'll share it with George.
Jeff Snyder, 508 Gardner Street. The reason I gave you this is Wendy's plan from 2 weeks ago. Item 7 and item 8 were worth $397,500. This plan, they combined a total of $588,250. It's a $200,000 increase in 2 weeks. And the reason I bring that up is it's a little disconcerting. And since I don't have a lot of time, it's running awful fast, isn't it?
Nope.
So I would propose, because there's so many unknowns about the culvert, and you've all expressed them, that I propose that we pull those out of this contract temporarily. It's not going to impact anything to do that, right? We're not doing it till next June. Why, if I was a contractor, and I was one for decades, there's nothing that licks your chops more than somebody who has a price and then changes things, because the margins tend to be exponentially different. There's no impact if you take that. First of all, find out why that's different, and then remove that from the contract. And then in this process, when you decide what you're going to do, then rebid it. And I suspect it's going to be less than that to remove that. So that's one point. The next point is, the whole notion, and I know from an engineering point, and I know Councilman Branson, I respect that and everybody, but just the notion in a community that's advocating this beautiful natural restoration of the river, and this environmental sensitivity, that we're literally going to dump 23,000 or 2,350 tons of debris back in there. It just doesn't make the smell test for Northville. And that's all I want to make in that point. And hopefully between now and then, we can figure out a way to remove that and then clean it all up underneath there. Because I think you got to remove the sides first to get all that much soil. That's a lot of soil. Have it all exposed, to demolish it and remove it. So, and by removing it from the contract now, it gives you that opportunity. As far as I really appreciate your point about, the dust and that. So I won't even go there, because I think you guys are getting there. Although I'd like to see a real plan as part of it, some kind of put that in writing, what you said, and have that incorporated now, it's a guide for them. The other thing is, with regard to Bealtown, closing or opening Griswold Street and having those trucks up, there's pedestrians that walk across there. You're going to go past Ford Field. You're going to go past residential homes up on Griswold going to 8 Mile. What is everybody there going to have to say about that? These trucks will be bouncing, even with a screen on there, you're going to be bouncing soil out of there. I don't think that's a great idea unless you put monitors up there. I don't have enough time to finish.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jeff. You got a second. Thanks.
Sorry for being
Next.
so limited on my submissions.
Yep. Next,
Susan Plaga, East Main.
Susan.
Short and sweet.
Yes.
Mr. Carter, Wendy, you both brought it up. The pounds that are going up Griswold, you called it a truck route. Has anybody looked into the freezing and frost laws on truck routes? You have timeframes that you can't take trucks on those routes. You need to look into that before you put another road through there. And I know when those timeframes are. I'll get back to you.
Good info. Next. Good.
Thank you. My name is Carrie Bickner. I just moved back to town. I live at 318 Pinnell, grew up at 340 Pinnell. Griswold may be a trucking route, but it's not a poop chute. I really do appreciate that. I mean, I'm being a little impertinent. I'm new to the ground level operations, though I've been reading them from afar. I'm a librarian with capital planning experience, although nothing even elevators is the most complicated thing I ever had to deal with. But I will say that the neighborhoods along Griswold and the animals and the water, I mean, and I just heard about this Northville or this Griswold base today for the first time. Can we, I don't know what the procedure is for this in city council, but can we slow the roll on Griswold? Please, thank you.
Thank you very much. Next.
Dominic Giovanni, 443 River Street. I have questions and comments. On the soil, is most of this contaminated soil run from Beale to 7 Mile along river?
This is public comment, so we'll get back with you. There's no answers to this for you
You
today.
don't know where's that?
No, there's no answers back.
No, we're not answering the question.
We're not answering, so keep
I'm
rolling.
not answering questions.
We are not.
Okay.
That's the state of Michigan
Dust
policies and
mitigation.
procedures. Go ahead.
Okay, dust mitigation. You guys keep bringing up Eagle and they're the ones that are supervising it. Well, I had an Eagle gentleman at my house with 2 or 3 of the people out here. And he saw dust mitigation with buildings being knocked down without any water. He was in my driveway when it happened. Barbara has been in my driveway as it's happening. So if that soil is going along that way, which is what I've been informed it has, when you start digging that up, which is 30 feet from my house, how are you going to keep that dust down? Not just saying, well, we got a plan, we know, the water hasn't worked. There's 500 videos, 1,000 pictures of 6 of us that have the dust going everywhere. And as far as your street sweeper goes, if you're going to use the street sweeper, have them use some water, because otherwise he's just turning up the dust and shooting it everywhere. It's ridiculous. And again, when you get to 8 Mile and Griswold, aren't you going into Oakland County?
Baseline. Yeah. Baseline is the different. Yes, that's correct.
Aren't you getting into Oakland County?
Mhm.
So when the trucks get there, what are they doing? Turning left and going past back, or just so I know I have for a route? Can you answer that question or no? Can't answer that either.
You will get probably a lot of these answers tomorrow. Go ahead.
All right. How many trucks? Somebody said 700. Are those all going to be going down Griswold?
Good question.
We're not supposed to answer.
Sorry.
It's not a
But
Q&A.
you might be surprised. You might get all those answers tomorrow by somebody from the administration.
Hi there. Jennifer Maud, 21546 Holmbury Road. Yeah. So most of you know me from the Riverwalk Task Force. I'm a member of the River Restoration Task Force since it began. And I'm really happy to hear Wendy's solution and that we need not hold up an immediate approval of moving work forward for the issue of the culvert materials, because I really want to see this project move forward. I had 3 calls today from concerned citizens asking my opinion on this crushing and leaving in place of the culvert material. And my answer is I don't have an opinion on the final disposition of that because I don't have the information to go on it. And I'm wondering whether the city has that information available to it before making the decision. So I'm really happy to hear that there's time, but let's not dither on it. Let's not run into the situation again where we have the next presentation in front of us and need to defer. Now's the time to plan for that sampling. The fact that this wasn't part of the work plan already, this is a material much like soil in the context of it may be a contaminated material that needs to be evaluated and the disposition determined based on sampling. This could be done through, we know that there's sediment lining that.
Sediment sampling could be conducted through the manholes. We can sample the concrete beneath it. The reasons I believe that this should be considered a potentially contaminated material, much like we had the release recently. There may have been many undocumented releases similar. We have non-point source potential releases. Wow, that time goes fast. But also we have upstream of that for decades prior to the interceptor trench and the El Napo collection system at the General Oil facility. There's probably, a good chance there was decades of contaminated water and sediment going through and settling in that. It may be in the concrete. It's likely in the sediment lining that concrete, PCBs, chlorinated solvents, petroleum, VOCs, SVOCs, metals. Did I mention PCBs? Those should be sampled for.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. Appreciate it. Next.
Okay. Good evening, Council.
Good evening.
Michelle Aniel, 402 Yerkes. So I want to thank you first for the commitment to the Bealtown neighborhood and the community in general. Your commitment and words to the effect of making sure that this project going forward meets the requirements of the state and federal, local, et cetera. Barb and John, I can't thank you enough for bringing up the due care plan and the work plans. The due care plan, that's the detailed plan that says what they're going to do with anything that's contaminated, that document, I look at it, that's the foundation document, because everything that comes along with it, as far as the brownfield plan and the two work plans that are going to be done, one work plan for the grant funding through Eagle and the other one through the brownfield TIF, they build off that. They're not going to be as detailed though, because the work plans only identify those eligible activities and how things are going to be mitigated based on the ones that are going to be funded. So if you don't know what's in that due care plan, you can't keep the commitments that you've made tonight. So I firmly believe, and have always said this to you, this project does need to continue to move forward. It always has, as long as processes are followed properly. But more importantly, the information is transparent and provided to the community in a timely fashion. So I'm going to ask for two things for you tonight for you to consider. The first one is get the proposed redevelopment webpage back up and running, please. Get the documentation on that. That's a place that people used regularly to keep up to date on what was going on with the Downs as it went through the Planning Commission review process. It was a treasure trove of information. Could you imagine how much misinformation, you're not going to take it all away, but how much you could reduce a lot of what you're getting if that one format was available for people to get information. Without these documents, understanding, people aren't going to be comfortable. So here's my request to you. Consider, please, making your approval, going forward with it, but make it contingent on not releasing any permits but the grading one until you've got the due care plan, both 381 work plans, any updated testing that's been done so that you know exactly what
Thank you.
information in the due care plan means.
Thank you so
Same
much.
with the work plans.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thank
Great comments. Nancy Darga, you're up.
I'm the last batter, apparently.
Well,
Nancy Darga, 516 North Center Street. I don't have to tell you that the city is embarking on one of the most transformational projects that will impact the environment of the whole entire Rouge watershed, with the daylighting of the river and the creation of the river park. I like what you said, Mr. Carter, when you pointed out this is one of the biggest environmental cleanup jobs that the state has taken on outside of the Uniroyal site. Unfortunately, I'm painfully aware of that project. Anyways, the issue before us is that I'm going to reiterate with my fellow task force member is we do whatever it takes to get this project moving, because it is so essential to the future of the watershed, and that anything we do in this project is an improvement of what's there currently right now. I also want to point out that the River Task Force, unlike most of the general citizens, have had the benefit of knowing about the work plan that was presented by the 381 Brownfield. We know about the 201 cleanup proposals, and we know about the continued testing of the soil. And I agree with my fellow task force member, Michelle, that we're really anxious to see the final due care program. I also want to congratulate you. I cannot believe the abuse that the city and has taken in terms of questioning your diligence in reviewing the environmental processes that are required, both regulatory and just because you want to make sure that good things continue to happen on this site. And I just want you to know that I hope that the citizens of Northville will put so much energy in working together versus putting disinformation out on the street. It doesn't help anything. Let's get the facts out. And I like Michelle's proposal of getting the website back up and running. So thank you for all you're doing. We're standing behind you. We want to, I think that this, when it's all done, that we will make something that for generations will appreciate. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nancy. Is there anybody else? It's last call, going once, going twice. I am closing off public comment on this. Any additional comments before I'm asking for what's in your package? Any comments from us up here?
Well, we have a motion.
If we have a motion that's
Yeah.
in your package,
So we have a motion,
yes,
and that's to authorize the contract, which
Yes.
is important for this to move
that is
forward.
correct.
Wendy had mentioned, and there's so many permits in this, I'm not going to rely on my brain to remember which one, but there was the grading permit, and then there was the next critical point that came, which permit? I'm not talking about the Eagle. I'm talking about the city permits. And here's where I'm heading with this is I wonder if we move this and then it's just, we further direct city administration at that before that next permit to come back and give us an update. Is that, that there's a point certain that so this is a very large contract, but at some point we get an update and some of the questions I think or concerns we had will be answered by that time.
Instead of commenting about the next permit, what we have talked to our code staff about is issuing a grading permit for the river excavation or the riverbed. And so that means they can do all the grading, all the installation of the removing of the contaminated soil, installation of the new riverbed. And then before they do any more grading, we could come back with an update.
Okay.
So
But how
that's
would,
what I would.
how would
suggest
how could that translate into something that is a reasonable actionable item. So it doesn't inhibit the contract. And
We actually have, we have
You have it in
plans.
there.
We have plans that delineate the river work and the rest of the park.
so I'm trying to look for a way that we could incorporate that into the motion as a touch point to come back.
And just to
us.
clarify, when we say that, if we're issuing the grid, because I think we're on, this going in the
Okay.
exact same direction. But if we're saying grading permit only, so then does that allow us to say that culvert portion that we're recognizing, we have an unknown right now in terms of whether it's on-site, off-site, how that's gonna be managed, we need to get more information on that. We would basically say we're approving the grading permit now, allowing them to work within those confines. But we're gonna basically defer at this stage, because it's not until next year, the decision on whether or not that is going to be on or off-site.
Right. I need a clarification, though. Does council determine what goes into the grading permit? Isn't that an
I think
administrative function?
I think that you're approving a permit would be issued by the building official. Are you saying that you want to approve the contract up to a certain amount?
No, well, here's where I'm.
Or do you want an update? I mean, if you want a
Yes.
benchmark or a milestone that we come provide an update.
Yes.
That's easy to do.
I am not trying to inhibit
Yeah.
I think we'd all
the
like that.
contract in total as it's
Yep.
before us now.
Yes.
That includes the cost and all the items that are listed there, because those could change.
So you
I
could
mean,
just-
so.
I
the
think you could
items-
make the motion and say approve it as this with the direction that staff will come back and provide an update on the status of the river park by whatever milestone you pick.
And well, that's why I'm asking for the wording for that,
So,
Miles. I don't
what do you-
want to do a date because
Yeah,
we don't know what
what's
that
the
date's gonna
date?
be.
What's the prior to commencement of work on the river culvert?
Mhm. Right.
That staff will
Simple.
provide an update to council prior to commencement of work on the river culvert.
Mhm.
Yeah, because I don't want to
That's pretty clear
hamstring,
to us. Yes.
to a date.
It may be 6 months.
And I don't want to inhibit the contract award because that affects performance bonds, insurance, all kinds of stuff.
Mhm.
There's just a cascading effect that's not.
We're fine with that.
Okay.
That's perfectly accepted, clear to us.
So, so it would be, further direct city administration to, update, did you use the word update?
Provide an update to
Provide
city
an
council
update.
prior to
Provide-
commencement of river culvert work.
Yeah, I'm just trying to edit what.
Thank you.
Work on the river culvert, work on the river culvert.
Yes,
period.
great.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm going to float this as a potential motion,
Okay,
and I would
Say it
hope
clearly.
that somebody can help me with this. The first sentence is the same. I move to authorize the city manager to sign a contract with BNV Earth Movers LLC of Brighton, Michigan in the amount of $8,962,925.90. Really cents? I mean.
yeah,
To daylight the Rouge River and construct a river park. City council further directs city administration to provide an update prior to commencement of work on the river culvert.
Support?
okay, so we have a motion. Properly supported. Any other discussion? on
Only
this motion?
discussion, and it's more of a request
Okay.
from our city manager. I echo Michelle Annual's comments on the criticality of the due care plan, the work plans, and all of those details. I don't know if we necessarily want to build it into the motion tonight, mostly because I think we'd be doing it on the fly to try to make sure we're capturing the language correctly. But I would like an update, and we can do a follow-up on this on timing, when we're going to have that, how that's coming through, when that's going to be kind of coordinated back with Brownfield. Make sure we've got a detailed plan for those deliverables, because
I
they
agree
are
with that.
critical to our success.
Agree.
Agreement? So we have a motion properly supported with updates from the administration. Any other discussion on this?
No, and the other thing that I'm keeping completely separate, but I've got a firm expectation, and I think city administration shares it, is that please, run that final construction site operation plan by us. But that is city administration's responsibility to work that out and just keep us apprised, and that would be it. Okay,
Great.
so that's separate. that's why I'm not.
Correct.
We have a motion properly supported. Any other discussion on that? Going once, going twice? Look, I'd like a roll call vote on this one, if you could do that, please.
Sure. Carter,
Yes.
Janetti,
Yes.
Krenz,
Yes.
Morosky Brown,
Yes.
Turnbull.
Yes. Outstanding. We have a motion. It's passed. Thank you very much for the discussion. Thanks for all the input, and you'll probably get some of those questions answered tomorrow that we can't answer publicly here tonight. So with that, as we close down, we're on that last section, mayoral comments. It's Labor Day coming in Northville. Get downtown, enjoy the concerts. The concerts will be coming through that. We won't be meeting until the beginning of next month. I thank each and every one of you. We couldn't do all this, as mentioned, Planning Commission and others. We have 27 boards and commissions. We have 6.5% of all of our people on those. We can do what we're doing, Riverwalk, Ford Field, even Farmers Market, because of all the engagement. And it's because of all of you. So I thank you for all of that. Appreciate it. That's all I have tonight. Anybody else, final comments?
I'm going to mention one item because I got calls and it's like, I'm just, the rumor mills in this town are really something. So I just want to, yes, that Hunter Pastor, Seth Horowitz has offered to meet with each of us just to have a discussion and an update on the plan. And it's up to the discretion of any individual council member if they want to meet with them. But
And I recommend it.
Yep.
It's a nice.
It's good.
no, so I just want to, I mean, I'm getting them like, what, how do these rumors, it's like,
Yep.
yes, the offer has been made
Very
and
well.
it'll be individual and is that fair, George?
Yeah.
Is that, so
It's
everybody?
definitely not a rumor. I did it.
Yep, good.
No, I meant that it is,
Other comments from council members?
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Nothing?
No, I just expressed my appreciation. I know it was referenced, the beatings that we take. That feedback's critical. So I do appreciate the emails, the contact, these suggestions and recommendations, even if we don't always end up at the same place. It really is helpful to make sure we're working towards the right direction for Northville. So
Absolutely.
thank you.
I'm looking for a motion for adjournment. Do I have that motion?
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
and thank you.
Thank you.
So-
We